Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is the morning meeting. Thank you for joining. Dan, Sean, and I are delighted that you're here, streaming in. Lots of new people I see, just like on Romper Room. I see Bob and I see all sorts of new people. Anyway, grateful to you for being part of the community here where we talk about the day's events. The morning meeting modeled after the network news division's morning meetings in which they run through the events of the day, kick things around. There's a little O. Henry twist, though. Then we take your questions and comments. If you're here on the two-way platform, you want to be part of it, please raise your electronic hand. We've had tons of new people already this week. Let's not break our streak. Let's get some new folks raise their hand, ask some questions, make some comments. If you're watching on YouTube or X, please feel free to enjoy the program. And also, if you want to, write stuff in the chat. The chat has gotten to be so infused with peace, love, and understanding. I've almost stopped issuing this directive, but I can't stop completely because some of you are still screwing it up. Please don't put junk in the chat. Just to debate rigorously, but don't insult people
Be
personally.
as bright as the flowers are
Yeah,
behind you.
yeah. And stop telling me I'm interrupting Sean too much. Sean loves to be interrupted. Stop telling
Love
me I'm interrupting. Stop telling me I'm interrupting Dan too much. Dan and I are like lovebirds. We finish each other's sentences. It's all out of affection. All right. Why are you covering your mouth, Sean? This is a live program. I can say whatever I want. All right. Today on the schedule, President Joseph Robinette Biden, after his speech last night. Oh, and I got to warn you too, because we did no pre-gaming. I'm going to ask you to say something nice about the speech, because I know our inclination is for all of us to trash it, because it was,
No, no, no.
in the
I've
words,
got the perfect nice
in
thing.
the words of John Pedro, it's the worst speech ever by a president. So be ready. But today he's doing more farewellish stuff. 2 p.m. delivers remarks at the farewell ceremony at the Pentagon. I forgot to put on the day book in my Substack. He's also doing his interview with Lawrence O'Donnell. So look forward to that. I made a mistake last night in the Substack. I said the speech was at 9 rather than 8. Probably thousands of you missed it because you thought it was on at 9. I regret the error. I really do. I don't know why I thought it was at 9. Kamala Harris is attending the president's event at the Pentagon at 2 o'clock. And at 4:15, rescheduled from earlier, she's going to sign the drawer in her desk. We talked about that last week or the week before. She rescheduled because of the fires, the signing ceremony, poll press. Look forward for that. No idea what Donald Trump and J.D. Vance are doing. I will say J.D. Vance continues to slip out of Sean's neighborhood and do stuff, including a dinner last night with a bunch of donors. I need to put some sort of cowbell on that guy or a low jack or an Apple AirTag because he's doing a lot of stuff that I'm having trouble tracking. 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Democratic Party chair candidates are having a forum in Detroit, Michigan, sponsored by The Politico. Did you know when Politico started, they were going to call it The Politico? Politico, and you can you can go
Didn't
to
they
their
actually
YouTube
launch
channel.
as the Politico? I think they
When
launched.
they launched it was kind of 50-50. Sometimes they called it the Politico, sometimes they called it Politico. It was a little weird.
Oh,
And then they settled in, they dropped the definite article. 1:30 p.m. Eastern time, you can watch on YouTube the chair candidates. There's a new chair candidate in the race. What's that guy's name, Dan?
It's Sanders guy.
Yeah.
Lucy.
And
I'm
well,
blanking.
I can't think of
We
his name either.
lost a
But
guy
anyway,
And we
too, right?
lost
but he's
one
not,
too. We
and we
lost the
lost the
gentleman
guy who
from New
was the
York.
guy who had come on two-way tonight, New York State legislator. He dropped out. He endorsed what's his
Minnesota
name?
dude, right?
Minnesota
Martin.
dude.
Martin.
Martin. I'm amazed that Martin is right now. Martin is the clear front runner, and he's picking up steam against the guy from Wisconsin, Ben. I thought Ben Wickler was going to win, but Wickler remains the underdog. But this new guy gets in the race. I don't think he's going to win, but he jumbles things up. But he's not in the forum today because he got in too late. Congress, 9 a.m. At this hour, the House considering the Preventing Violence Against Women by Illegal Aliens Act. At noon, the Senate resumes their consideration of the Laken Riley Act. And now I will go to Robin Newton of C-SPAN. She works over there incredibly well. C-SPAN, as I say before, it is Brian Lamb's gift to the world. Incredible enterprise over at C-SPAN. They have the list of all the hearings today for nominees. Lee Zeldin to be head of EPA, 10 a.m. Also 10 a.m. Doug Burgum to be head of the Interior Department. Also 10 a.m. Eric Turner to be head of HUD. 10:15, Pam Bondi confirmation hearings continue without Pam Bondi. witnesses testifying, I think, against her and for her, but probably mostly for her. And then 10:30 a.m., Scott Bessent testifies to be the Treasury Secretary of the United States of America. All right, big news yesterday was the Middle East peace deal. Some indications in Israel and on the ground with more violence that the deal may be a bit fragile, but the conventional wisdom amongst many people is that it will hold, and that is a great accomplishment. And despite the sniping and credit taking and sarcasm on both sides, this is an unprecedented cooperation between an outgoing and incoming administration that allowed this to happen. I compared it to trying to open a jar of pickles. Joe Biden worked on the jar for like a year to try to get the lid off the thing and then handed it to Donald Trump, and Trump popped it open. But he couldn't have popped it open if Biden hadn't loosened it up with years trying to get that lid off. Now, yesterday, Donald Trump, National Security Advisor, was generous about sharing credit. Donald Trump himself on Truth Social, not so generous. The State Department spokesman, what's his name? Miller? What's that guy's name?
Matt Miller.
Matt Miller, who used to be the Justice Department
Well, can
spokesman.
I just to be clear on,
Yes,
on the
yeah,
Trump?
yeah,
He did take credit, but he didn't knock Biden. He just took credit. That's different.
Yeah,
just to be
but
clear.
well, it's a little bit different, Sean. But in a normal world, two people would they'd have a joint event and say our joint statement. He took the credit. He didn't knock Biden, but he took the credit. Just as
Fair
Biden
enough,
took the
but
credit. Just as
Biden didn't.
Biden took the credit.
When asked, did not.
I agree. So
let's be
Matt
fair.
Miller, who's one of the smartest people, best, hardest working people I know in either party, spoke at the State Department and shared the credit, followed by an extraordinary interlude from Sean's successor, the White House press secretary. Please roll tape.
When it comes to the involvement of President-elect Trump's team, it's been absolutely critical in getting this deal over the line.
Around who gets to take credit for this deal.
No one's dancing around here.
A colleague at the State Department briefed our colleagues that President Trump was critical in getting this deal over the line. Do you not agree with that statement?
I mean, look, I'm not going to speak to a random person. I don't know who this person is. I'm not going to. Oh. What I can say is, look, obviously Matt Miller will speak for himself. What I can say is there are steps that were taken here that is really important and critical, and that started with this president's.
All right, Sean, we always try to be forward-looking rather than just retrospective here. But what does that say to you about how to be White House press secretary? What does that say to you about how to do the job going forward?
Don't be a moron. The idea, like, I know who Matt Miller is. This is not like the idea that you're calling the State Department spokesman a random person. One, shows cluelessness. Two, the idea that it's not coordinated and you didn't know what he was going to say. I would always say to the guys at State, I'm going out to brief. What are you guys saying ahead of time? Is this the message? I'll echo it, or I stand by what State said. The idea that you threw him under the bus shows a complete lack of, so forward-looking, coordinate your statements, know who your colleagues are. He is not some low-level deputy spokesman from some random consular bureau. He is the State Department spokesman. And to say you don't know who a rando is just makes you look incompetent on the world stage. But I would just say this as a side note to the deal. Your description and your analogy is very apt. I think the idea that, part of the reason that Hamas, I think, gave is that they said, wow, Biden's got this deal. If we were looking for daylight between the two administrations, not only one not getting it, but Trump's going to amp it up. We might as well cut the deal now. This is good for America. I actually really do think that the press went a little overboard trying to figure out who got credit. They played into this too much. This was a good deal for America. The idea that Americans are being released is a good day for our country. And the idea that the press corps focused more on who to give credit for and baiting the situation speaks very poorly on them as in their industry.
I agree with you, but what she did and what President Trump did were both unnecessary.
Yeah,
unnecessary. And
like,
Joe Biden.
I just, like I said, I think that if you're asking what the next press secretary should do, look at how Karine Jean-Pierre has handled her job and do the exact opposite.
Dan.
Yeah, I totally agree with both of you guys. And I think, look, if anyone deserves probably the most credit, it's Israel. They decimated the leadership of both Hamas and Hezbollah. And with Assad gone, it was a blow to Iran. And I think Trump coming in did give, Israel some more leverage, because I think they knew that things were probably only going to get worse with kind of a complete green light for Israel from the United States. So I think they all deserve credit. It's an American deal. It's good for the country. It's good for the world.
Okay, here's the lesson going forward. Everyone write this down. One of the smartest and one of the biggest tests of intelligence for any person is to have the good sense to turn down a job you are offered when you are not qualified for the job. Okay? It's a really important thing. Really important. Even if it's a job you've always wanted, you should ask yourself, am I qualified to do this job? All right, TikTok. Deadline is Sunday. Both Joe Biden and Donald Trump are said to want to delay the deadline so people can continue to watch themselves dancing in their kitchens beyond Sunday. There's all sorts of intermediate steps that might be taken. There's some question about what either Joe Biden or Donald Trump could do in the face of a bipartisanly passed congressional law. We are still waiting for the Supreme Court ruling, but the court is not expected to strike down the law or delay. Donald Trump has said explicitly now he's looking for a way to delay this. He loves TikTok. The head of TikTok is coming to the inauguration, like everyone else who's a billionaire off of social media. We don't know exactly how this is going to happen, but I think it's pretty clear that that TikTok is not going to disappear from phones on Sunday. Now, subplot. In any administration, there's a pair of jobs held by people who could be in conflict. One is the Treasury Secretary and the head of the National Economic Council. The other is the National Security Advisor and the Secretary of State. I believe this administration is on track for those two pairs to get along really well. Marco Rubio has been a star in his confirmation hearings, bipartisan support. People are very high on his prospects in that job. The National Security Advisor, I think, is a sleeper story. He has been extremely visible. He is, I think, has the potential to be extraordinarily good at this job based on what I've seen so far. Here he is on Fox talking about the TikTok situation.
If the Supreme Court comes out with a ruling, in favor of the law, President Trump's been very clear. Number one, TikTok's a great platform that many Americans use and was great for his campaign and getting his message out. But number two, he's going to protect their data. There's people out there who don't want the U.S. government seeing all their data and passwords. We certainly don't want the Chinese government seeing all their data and passwords. He's a deal maker. I don't want to get ahead of our executive orders, but we're going to create the space to put that deal in place.
How many in the
deal in place?
How many in the
All right, here's my second pro tip of the day. Make sure your password on your TikTok account is a unique password. Don't use it on anything else. But the threat of China and TikTok is not just about passwords, right? It's also about spying, it's about propaganda, etc. So I think he's understating the case. However, sidebar, before we start talking about the fate of TikTok, Dan, do you agree with me that Mr. Waltz has the potential to be a very effective figure for the country and the world?
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think to your point, he seems to be able to pretty deftly navigate the different elements of the Trump world. And, Rubio's been a huge China hawk. And so I think, it'd be hard to see Rubio coming out and saying some of the same stuff. So I'll be curious to see.
Sean, are you a longstanding Waltz fan?
Yes, absolutely. For a million reasons. His background, Mike is a special forces guy. If you really want to understand him, by the way, read his book. Just as a side note, there's two books that I really think as a military guy and just as a leader. Dan Crenshaw's book as a Navy SEAL and Mike's as a special forces guy.
Can I borrow your copy?
Yeah, absolutely. But it gives you some real insight into his thinking. He's a brilliant tactician. And he understands how to bring people together. The sort of the ethos of the special forces, and I hate giving the Army any credit, is exemplified in how Mike Waltz does his job. He really knows how to bring people together. He really knows how to build bridges. He can speak MAGA. I agree with you wholeheartedly. I think Mike Waltz will be the sought after star. It's not just Secretary of State. He will have a massive hand in DOD policy. But he's a smart guy, a brilliant communicator. And the one other pro tip you mentioned about taking a job, one caveat in the Trump administration is remember, your job isn't about you. It's about President Trump. And what he did brilliantly in that interview was not say what Mike Waltz thinks, what Congressman Mike Waltz thinks, what former Colonel Mike Waltz thinks. He said what President Trump thinks. And the way he articulated President Trump's thinking was almost as if President Trump had written it himself.
Yep. And I'll remind people who claimed for 2 years, if Donald Trump wins, no one good will go work in the administration. It'll all be a bunch of third-tier MAGA yes men and women. That guy appears to me, from everything I've seen, to be a world-class pick for a very important job. And credit to President Trump for picking him. Grateful to him for taking it, assuming he doesn't flame out. And again, a reminder to those of you who think Trump is just picking horrible clowns. Just not true. He's only picked some horrible clowns. He's also picked some excellent people. All right, let's talk about the TikTok part. Sean, Donald Trump has been Jekyll and Hyde on TikTok. And now he's, he loves TikTok, he says, and TikTok loves him. What is the right outcome for America here? Is it to find a buyer?
No, well, sure, find a buyer, but ByteDance doesn't seem to want to sell. Just to be clear as to how this goes, you mentioned it. TikTok will basically phase out. The updates will, so if you have it on your phone now, you will keep it on your phone. It will keep working. But as the updates, iOS and Android updates come, you'll start to have bugs and it won't work. And basically it fades out. And they estimate that that's about a 3-month plan. That being said, the right answer is either get rid of it, ban it, or make sure that it's under complete U.S. ownership. But that's it. This is a national security threat. This is about our future. And I mean, for you outlined some of the reasons, but I get why President Trump liked it. It worked for him politically. Good for him. But he's not running again. This is an existential threat to the United States posed by our greatest foe. We must ban it. We must get rid of it now.
You can only imagine like a Peter Sellers movie, the Chinese communists having a staff meeting and saying, the Americans still haven't got us off all their phones. We're still.
I mean, we want to like
how could we lose to these guys?
You cannot complain about
so
Chinese
stupid.
spy balloons. Look, there's a story out today in Politico about how they're hacking, Janet Yellen's phone and getting dossiers on Americans, and everyone got outraged over a balloon. You're putting it on your damn phone, for God's sakes. Don't get upset and outraged about a balloon and then put it on your phone.
Put right in your phone in every house in America. Dan, are the boys on TikTok?
Oh, they are. I actually had 3 of them at dinner last night say, are they going to like shut down TikTok? Am I going to lose it? Like, look, I think I agree with both of you that it's, ripe for espionage and spying. But the reality is 150 million some odd Americans use it. Trump loves it because it was a great campaign tool because so many people use it.
But that's the argument you make. How many people use it is exactly the reason that it's a threat to us.
I get it. But to pull that out of the system is not. Well, look, so I think, Mark, to your point, what the fate of TikTok is to be sold to a domestic entity. I do find it like, would they really sell to Elon Musk? Would that be good to kind of, the house of Musk here kind of accumulating toys?
That's trading one problem for another.
Right. So then, like, who does buy it? I mean, I do think bottom line.
There are a bunch of people who want to buy it. There are a bunch of Americans who want to buy it.
100% agree. So I think the bottom line is it will remain, it will be sold, and it will be as
but fundamentally, see, I disagree on this because part of the whole point is China doesn't want to sell it. They've created this massive tool.
I know.
It's too big. It's too big to close.
But if Trump could convince them that the alternative is to shut it down, maybe they would sell it. But they'd probably sell it with some secret, spyware in there.
Well, by the way, TikTok has said they're planning to shut it off on Sunday, not just the updates. Which is by the way, a tried and true tech lobbying tactic. Turn it off. You want outrage? Suddenly on Sunday you don't have it for all the kids waking up.
What some kids say is, TikTok, there'll be something new.
Yes.
Yeah. Maybe we should start one.
Chinese are already.
Maybe we should start one.
They're already pushing another app. It's not
Chinese
even
have a backup.
stories and reels. These guys, they're not dumb. They're just. This proves the point. They're all about collecting data and espionage. This is a.
Right.
I just cannot.
All right,
how we've allowed this to happen.
All right. Again, if you want in on a TikTok conversation or anything else, please raise your hand. One more topic for us, at least so far. We'll see what happens. But so Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, much in the news. President Biden giving his speech last night, farewell address. He's doing his interview today. The Harris and her husband were in the Oval Office, sitting there with Joe Biden and Hunter's wife for the farewell speech. They're going to be at the Pentagon together today. There's a Wall Street Journal story today, which puts in print what's been kind of buzzed about for a while, that Kamala Harris is upset that Joe Biden keeps saying he would have won. In addition, the Wall Street Journal story says, following up on the New York Times story yesterday, or the New York Post story yesterday, that they just report as fact that she and her husband plan to split time between California and New York after she leaves office. NBC News reporting that she's probably or definitely going to write a book. Okay. So there's lots going on with the two of them. Regarding the speech, I'll tell you what John Podhoretz said. And again, I'm reading his text with permission. John said, serious question, was Biden's speech last night the worst speech ever delivered by a president? Pretty close. Then he says, the first half was by ChatGPT. The second half was like reading a USA Today column by Al Newhart in 1987. Some of you will find that hilarious, and some of you have no idea what it means. Trust me, it's hilarious. Speech was horrible. And I mean, when I was thinking about how we talk about it, I don't think there's anything good to say about that speech, except that thank goodness it wasn't longer. But I warned you both, you're going to have to say something nice. Did I steal yours, Sean?
Yeah, I was going to say the only thing good about it was 17 minutes.
All right, Dan, what can you say good about the President Biden's speech?
He did wish Trump well, and that's admirable.
Not really.
No,
Pro
he did.
forma.
He did.
Pro
He said, I wish
forma
him the best.
Yeah, okay.
But can I just, Mark, I want to say this just as an overarching statement. He had 52 years in politics. This is a man who could have gone out trying to, as an elder statesman. Through my time, I've seen this. I've been able to do these things. I did this on civil rights and the LBGT. I mean, kind of what we've been talking about in verbal form. All of the, I pardon people who and given them a second chance at life. It's the American way, blah, 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 blah. Instead, it was like oligarchs are coming. And I mean, I was thinking to myself, really, the oligarchs that you awarded the Medal of Freedom to, the oligarchs, Mark Zuckerberg and Jeff Bezos, who were cool with you up until a week ago when they sucked up to Trump. I mean, it reeked of hypocrisy. I literally kept thinking to myself, there are literally no speechwriters left there. The same people who coordinated the Dem response to Pete Hegseth's hearing wrote that speech. It was horrible.
Horrible. We're going to have trouble being positive. We're supposed to be forward-looking, and I'm still wondering if he's going to do pardons. But here's what I will say, and this is how I'm making it forward-looking. The part of the speech that infuriates me is what he said about big tech is a view shared by tens of millions, and I'm somewhat sympathetic to it. Where has he been? He's been president for 4 years. Now it made me think, and I don't know the answer. Maybe somebody on here does. Did Eisenhower speak up against the military-industrial complex before he left? Did he fight it? I don't know. My guess is not. But there's, his agencies did a little bit. But if this is an existential threat to the United States, forget George Soros. Where has he been? Every so often, he took a shot at Zuckerberg. Every so often. But there should have been a war room set up if this is such an existential problem. Dan.
Man, to all those in the chat who say I need to speak more and interrupt more, you stole every one of my points, which is that in addition to being dark, it was inauthentic. I mean, that to me is what, yes, Eisenhower had begun to speak out about the challenges of the military-industrial complex. Teddy Roosevelt, wailed against the barons his whole entire presidency. There was almost oligarchs, that tech is too big. Disinformation, he mentioned a little bit the last 6 months, but it sounded like Bernie Sanders wrote it all of a sudden, that it was a speech to the DNC of where you should go in the future. So, I mean, to me, that just, it was, in addition to being dark, it was just so inauthentic. And to Sean, to your point, that is not who Joe Biden was.
That's right. I mean,
he was the lovable guy with the aviators, the Corvette, the happy warrior to the middle class from Scranton. Yeah, he was prickly. He had an Irish temper and stuff. But this kind of dark version of himself has just been really present the last 2 years. And it's sad.
I mean, this guy prides himself on his union work. I mean, again, this is a consistent theme the last several months. Missed opportunities.
Totally agree.
I mean, to Mark's point, I tweeted this out last night. Did he forget that he was president for the last 4 years? Where has this outrage been? But again, I'm thinking to myself, the prelude to this was was been in office for 5 decades. This is not, he's going to give his capstone thing. And it was sort of like, hey guys, Joe here. I'm out. Everything sucks. I was just shocked.
And the whole democracy thing in the beginning, too, it's we just had the election. We just, why go back to this again?
Right. I mean, But what? Yeah, that was my thing. Is that what about democracy? We all just went out and voted. Yeah, you lost, and yeah, they're sucking up to Trump. That's democracy, bro. I mean,
Okay, let's talk a little bit about Kamala Harris. I don't know
yeah,
how big a book I don't know how big a book advance she can get. I really don't. And I know the market, somewhat. I don't think she's going to get like an Obama level advance. Dan,
what do you
what's
think? Just give me a ballpark. What do you think?
if she promises to make news in the pitch, I think she can get 4.
Million.
If she won't promise to make news, 2.5.
Oh, I even think that's a little high.
It might be. I'm being optimistic for her. What do you think her speech rate will be, Sean?
I think that she can probably get somewhere around. It also depends on like what she tips her hand that she might be doing. Like if there's promise that it looks like she's running for governor, she might be in the I would say in the 80 to 100,000 range for the next 6
Oh my goodness. Are you serious?
Yeah.
I was going to say 100.
See, I think she thinks she's going to get 5, and I think she'll get somewhere between 125 and 200.
I think maybe, but
there's a lot of inflation.
Look, I as a
but
guy,
she's got to say something. Like, what is she going to?
But here's the other thing:
leadership, or
I will just tell you that having lived in this, that number one, there's a lot of corporations right now that do not want to. I mean, do you want to be at your board retreat publicly and say, "Oh, we just spent $100,000 bringing Kamala Harris in"?
I know.
Number two is that these guys generally want some insight, right? They're basically saying, "Hey, what's going on in DC?" And you're basically saying, "Hey, we lost the White House. We don't control either Congress, and the court is controlled by conservatives. So tell us what you think." I mean, hey, guess what? The American people just rejected you. We're not going to pay you $100,000 to hear that. So,
okay, her first book was a bestseller, which I didn't remember. Do you think, if you were a publisher, what would you expect her to write? Does she need to talk about Joe Biden's cognitive decline?
Yeah, that's the $1 million issue. I mean, that's what everyone wants.
Well, but what else? But what else? What else? If you were a book publisher and you were sitting with her in a meeting, and she was pitching, and she's like, "We want 4 million." What would you say she needed to write about besides what she knew about Joe Biden's cognitive decline? What else could she know?
I mean,
the 2024 campaign.
Right.
But what about it? What about it? What it was like to be with Oprah? Like,
no, like mistakes that were made, and picking Tim Wall. Well, because look,
but who's interested in that? Who's interested in her view of what mistakes she made?
If she's going to run again, you would. I mean, that's the key.
Publisher.
Because you're teeing up the next campaign. You're teeing up when she does the book tour. You're teasing for the next run, right?
But look, again, not to having been through this process, coming out of a White House. To Mark's point, I sat in a room and they're basically like, "Give us 5 stories," and they go back to you and say, "All right, take me down that story. What are you willing to say? Can you say that the president yelled at you and told you were a jerk and that no one's ever heard that?"
And you know what else they're going to say? They're going to say, "Can someone else report this before your book comes out?"
I was about to say, and they want to know, is this going to break in this book? Right? Because they need stories to roll out to get books to get people to buy them in advance. And if you're just and look, I like I said, I went through this process, and they sit in the room and they go after you. Take me down that path. Okay, can you say something about how the president reacted that no one's ever heard? Well, okay, but did he yell at you? Did he yell at Mike Pence? Did he say this? Did he?
Correct.
He treat someone.
You're 100% right. And what I'm saying is the only stories I can think of that would be of public interest that would sell books are for her to dime at herself or Joe Biden. And I don't think she'll do either of those things.
Right. Talking about the future, it's like,
are you saying she's going to be timid and cautious?
Exactly. But also, I mean, obviously, as Sean correctly said, this has to do with whether she wants to maintain her political viability. I was surprised that NBC leaned so hard into, their sources did, into the notion that she's pretty much doing a book. Because I don't know. I mean, I gave you, for her speaking fee and her book deal, I gave you what I think the ceiling is. I don't think she'll get those things. I think she's going to be terribly disappointed, and what the market tells her on both speaking fees and on the book deal. You look at Quayle, Cheney, Gore's a little bit different because for all sorts of reasons. But I just don't know how demand she is. Now, there's a reality, which is a famous and powerful non-white woman as a speaker is attractive to a lot of people. But as Sean, as you pointed out, do you want to be the corporation or the nonprofit that hires her in the age of Trump? And political speakers in general are not the market for political speakers just isn't as great as it once was, because you don't want to turn off half your constituents if you're a group that has people who are both Republicans and Democrats.
Well, Mark, and here's another thing. If you're going to run as a Democrat, go back to Hillary Clinton in 2015. She got hammered. She spoke to Morgan Stanley. She spoke to Goldman Sachs.
Correct.
Like, it became an albatross around her neck that she took the money. And what did she say in those meetings, even though they were off the record? We have to move forward together. Like, it was hugging big business. If you're Kamala and you are supposedly not a progressive and 2024 proved you're a moderate, are you going to go own it and make money?
100%. And then the other market for presidents and vice presidents, right, is overseas. I don't know what but I don't know what the overseas market is.
No. But I was going there next, because the point is, what these guys, again, have done it, right? And what they want to know is, tell us what we need to know about how to do business over there. Who runs the point? Who's the important person? And be able to say, well, let me tell you how it used to be. That's not what they're paying for.
Well, unless the only other alternative is if you're going to try to seize the mantle of the party and offer this direction. And, hey, some companies will say she could be in the White House in 4 years. I'm just saying, but she doesn't, she's so cautious. She's so timid. I can't see her going out on the limb to really try to drive the party in a new direction.
She has two things going for her. One is the prospect of running for governor in California. So who's out there that might have
not if she's going to start spending half her time in New
York. Upper West Side, she's not.
I get it. I mean, that's she's not helping herself, right? And I will tell you this, the other thing is, having done a book, like, the second you start doing interviews, which is what you kind of want, so there's this balance of how much do I want to say now, because your publisher's like, save it. We always say keep it in the locker room.
That right? could be why she's not doing interviews. So at least part of the reason.
The second thing is, they're going to look at, when she sits down at this meeting, part of what they're going to say is, how big's your list? She's going to say, what's your email list? How many contacts? Because that's who's going to buy your book more than anything. People who already donate to you, who like you, who have a history of volunteering for you. So the one thing that I think she might have going for her, and this just depends on what she walked out of the campaign with, because remember, Biden built that, is what is she able to take with her and to say to a publisher, I've got 15 million names of donors that I are consistently still giving, but I don't know what that arrangement is with the DNC.
Right.
With the
Dan, that's a great question. Dan, who owns that list now? Biden, the DNC, or Harris?
Well, it depends where they housed it. I mean, if the campaign has it, then it would be Kamala Harris's. If they ran it through the DNC, then the DNC would own it. And depending on who that chair is, and some of your opponents, I'm not sure they would say, sure, like, go ahead and blast it out. So
they're never going to, right.
Will Joe Biden give paid speeches after he leaves office?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah? Who will hire him? Who will hire him to give a paid speech?
I still think that there's a difference between, there's a former president.
Name, give me an example.
You know what? I think didn't Reagan give one in Tokyo for like $2.5 million? Like, he only gave like 2 or 3. Yes. Somebody in the Middle East will give him like $2 million. And that's it.
Will he get a multi-million-dollar book deal?
No.
Will he try for one?
I don't know. I don't know that he wants one, or I don't know. Maybe.
Okay. One more question.
Mark? The only reason he would do it would be to settle scores with all the people he thinks wronged him.
Right. So
no. By the way, does Jill Biden write a book? That's the one that I want to read.
One more question, or maybe Hunter. One more question about Kamala Harris. The Obamas, for instance, and the Clintons, for instance, left office and just were like, we're going to make tens of millions of dollars. Like, set up our lives so we're getting speeches and books and boards and all this stuff, right? And George W. did that to some extent. Right? He gave a lot of paid speeches. He did a book or two. If you're Kamala and Doug's going to go back and be a lawyer. They're pretty well off, but they're not, set for life, and the kid's set for life. So to me, she faces this choice, which is, if she says, well, I can't do, as Dan, as you suggested, I can't go out and buck rake full on, A, because the market may not be there, and B, because if I want to run to be the Democratic nominee or governor of California, those things may not be compatible in terms of symbolism and time. On the other hand, this may be her moment to buck rake, because if she runs and loses, then the market's even worse. So the question I have as we close before we go to the community here is, do you think, is your sense of her that she wants to parlay having been vice president into tens of millions, or does she have other priorities?
I think she wants to you don't live on the Upper West, split your time between the Upper West Side and LA and just say, I just want to be comfortable. I think you are around a lot of very wealthy people. You look at their, second homes and whatnot. I've never known, maybe other than Jimmy Carter, a politician who could turn down the opportunity to make almost generational wealth. And she's 60 years old. So it's hard to walk away, especially given that her place in the future is so dicey.
So
Sean?
2 things I'd say. One is just getting back to Biden for a second. Remember, he's still got to figure out a library. He's got to fund it. He's got to do it. There's a lot of things that he's got to figure out, cementing what he wants to be his legacy and some of the former president trappings that go with that office. So there is stuff that he's got to figure out. And with all due respect, he's 82, or yeah, I think he's 82, right? My point is, you got to figure out some things before he's got a little agenda list that he might want to work on.
Well,
with
sure.
Kamala, go ahead, Dan.
I was going to say, part of, when you do a library, having been around, I didn't directly do either Obama or Bill Clinton, is you got to go sit down with people.
That's right.
If you're going to ask them for $50 million, 20, you got to go and spend like a weekend with them. And I can't see Joe Biden just given his condition.
Well, and that's why I'm saying that. Right. Absolutely.
So I don't even know how sending out Ted Kaufman to make the ask, they're going to be like, whatever.
Have either of you seen a post-presidency Bush 43, Clinton or Obama speech in person?
Yes.
Yeah. So okay. So those are high level, right?
Yep.
Those are not mailing it in. They're coming in and they're putting on a show.
Yep.
Right? It's like Hall of the Presidents with no mechanical presidents. I don't think Joe Biden is capable of that.
Agreed.
But my point is that to exactly why Dan said it, and to your point, Mark, like he's got to say, I've got a priority, which is to build a library and to build a legacy. It's going to take some time and effort. I need to put my time there. Kamala, frankly, has to have an internal discussion with herself and then with Doug, and to say, what do we want to do? Because I can't do both. Dan laid it out exactly. You got to figure out, if you want to be political, Kamala, you've got to do certain things. You can't go try to raise money from Goldman and have speeches and events and consultancies and then turn around and be the progressive champion of causes. So and the last thing I'll just say, again, from a personal standpoint, politics, DC, companies are very transactional. If you're in power, you do very well. If you're out of power, meaning your party, your people, and right now she walks away with neither house of Congress and very few. So there's a hard road to hoe where you're basically trying to get people that that you have relationships to help you out, because people aren't just out of the goodwill going to say, yeah, let's bring in somebody for a lot of money that really doesn't provide us any concrete insight. So she's in a very tough place right now financially to figure out where the money will come from.
Hey, Audra and Noah, was this conversation interesting enough to have gone 8 minutes over?
Absolutely. I'm working on my book proposal now.
Audra, what do you think?
No comment.
No comment. All right, then. All right, Chris Taylor. Chris Taylor, welcome in. Do you like the part of the program where the three of us talk, or the parts where we let the community ask questions and make comments?
Love it. I love both.
You love both? You love both. All right. Were you bored during the last 8 minutes? Were you bored during the last?
I'm very intrigued.
No? All right. Welcome in.
Thank you.
Maybe you and Audra can talk later. Chris, tell folks who don't know where you are, who makes that jacket or sweater or whatever that is, because I love the mustard.
Quarter zip. That's a quarter zip.
Yeah,
Quarter
no,
zip.
this is just Columbia.
Columbia. All right, it's beautiful. What's on your mind today, sir?
Northern Idaho. Okay, so real quick background, personal interest here. My son is giving a talk today at Mar-a-Lago on nuclear energy and the founding fathers.
Did you say hold on. Sorry, slow down. I apologize.
Wow.
Did you say you're in Northern Idaho?
Yeah.
And did you say your son is giving a talk at Mar-a-Lago today?
We moved here because he said he was going to settle. He did a startup in LA. We lost our kids or grandkids to the fires.
All right. So what's he doing
Anyway.
in Mar-a-Lago?
Wow.
Okay, so essentially, it's he's trying to get policy changed around nuclear energy, so small modular reactors. So that's
the right way to go on substance. What does he do for a living?
he really did just do a startup. He's got, so it's called Valor Atomics. He's got probably 20 guys, 25 guys, ladies and gentlemen, working for him in LA. They're essentially going to take small modular reactors and create synthetic fuels, use the heat from the nuclear energy to create other things.
Who's he talking to in Mar-a-Lago?
Musk and whoever. Like
has he been there? Has he been there before?
So he's 25. This is his third trip out. This time he's speaking. He's a young
his third trip to Mar-a-Lago?
Within the last month.
Can he be on the show tomorrow?
Yes, he could be. If you want him, he can be.
Book him
That's
tomorrow.
not bad. 25 and pitching Elon Musk.
Is he staying on the property, or is he staying at a hotel?
That's a good question. I haven't asked. You can ask him tomorrow if you want to.
Is he just in and out? He's a startup.
And do you know, is he doing a deck presentation or just gabbing?
Oh, well, right now, I mean, he's got the full presentations for, I mean, he's already had successful like pre-seed, seed rounds. He's now getting into the future.
All right, I got a million questions, but how do you get on Musk's radar? Like how do you get these?
I think some of his early backers have been SpaceX founders, co-founders, that kind of thing.
All right, you must be a proud dad.
Very proud of him.
Yeah. All right.
Shaq, did you put any kind of like IPO info? Or...
Yeah, way pre-IPO.
Okay, that's even better.
Did you? I would love it. I'm kidding. I'm not kidding. Get him on, book him for tomorrow for us, or book him on my show tonight. But did you come on to tell us that, or did you get something else?
Okay, so this is the question: political will. How do things change? So what I'm looking at, what I can see happening here, watching Chris Wright's the grilling yesterday. What I'm seeing is both parties yesterday were both promoting policy change around nuclear energy. So both the senators on the left and right, everybody wants it. So how do things actually change? Like from everything I'm seeing, everybody's like, we need energy.
Are you asking specifically about nuclear or just in general?
Kind of both. So specifically, when you see the political winds changing and both parties engaging, and yet there's long-standing policy that like the NRC is really slow to move on these things. Yeah. What does it actually take when both parties want it to happen?
Yeah. So nuclear, I've covered this for a long time. There's obviously a huge NIMBY issue, right? That starts there. Second is the technology has been changing. It's much better now. It's safer. It's more cost effective. Correct. It's more sort of elegant, but it keeps changing. So I think part of what's been a problem is you have to put up a long NIMBY and regulatory fight over technology A. And by the time the fight ends, we're on technology C. And so that's no longer the fight worth winning. So you got to start over and start fighting for technology C. And by the time you win that fight, we're in technology R, right? Yep. That's one issue. Another issue is the disposal issue, because Las Vegas didn't want it, and they've found no solution for that, and they found no solution for transporting it, right? So it's a NIMBY problem, not just in terms of locating the sites. It's an NIMBY problem in terms of disposal, and it's a NIMBY problem in terms of railroads and where the stuff's going to go. And finally, nuclear is not the only game in town. Europe's been more sensible, but there's a big fossil fuel thing. There's fracking. There's alternative sources, right? So it's not like nuclear is the only hope. And because of the first things I said, nuclear kind of just keeps falling to the back of the line. I would love the tech bros and gals who are around Trump to say, we're going to be the one who solved this. We're going to be the one who overcomes all those obstacles. But it's not a small number of obstacles. Dan.
Yeah, that's you said it very well. And I just think in general, politicians react to their constituents. Most of them, the number one thing they worry about is getting reelected. So when they, see a wind blowing, they will often try to get behind it. Or if not, you get like what just happened and the incumbent is defeated. So on a macro level, I think they are fairly simplistic. But I think Mark talked about the issue pretty well.
So two things. One, the folks on on any issue, there are folks on the committee of jurisdiction, in this case, energy, right, that are obviously, or on armed services that might care more about defense production or troop strength or morale, whatever, right? Those are your folks that are generally more into the subject than the other members of the body in the House or the Senate. And then to your point, you've got the thing. So part of it is getting it lined up, which you're right. There's this political alignment that seems to be going well. But then you've got only so many trains leaving the station congressionally in any given session. So part of this is lining everything up, which it seems to be getting there, and then going, okay, which train out of the station is going to work to make something happen. So I just, part of this is timing, and it's a lot of, everything, all the stars aligning, which is why some big things don't happen. I will say, executive wise, it seems like there's a lot more that can happen under Trump. I'm being asked though, Chris, in the chat, do you guys have some kind of family history with the Manhattan Project?
My wife's grandfather was one of, I think, 3 or 4 people in, what was it? So he was one of the top physicists. How did
someone in the chat know that? How did someone in the chat know that?
Because apparently, and I'll give Kevin full credit here, who said basically it's on his son's bio.
Yeah.
So I cheated.
Chris, crazy.
That's Google knows all.
The other answer to your question, Chris, and Sean kind of leaned into this, is you look at immigration reform, for instance, right? Labor's for it, big businesses for it, the faith community's for it, Bush was for it, there were a lot of Democrats in Congress for it, Obama was for it. The problem is big, complicated things, particularly in the divisive age in which we live, the people who are against it have a lot of advantages. Tech regulation, right? There's a huge consensus in America, in Congress, we need to regulate tech to keep harmful content away from kids. There's like universal, it tests like 90-10. But it can't pass because the people who don't want it to pass, the platforms, have the ability to muck it up. That's why I'm super eager to see if this is, Sean suggests this, on energy, on tech regulation even, can Trump break the mold? Because they're not business as usual. They're not, they're going to try to do
Mark, I think you're touching on something that's really important, right? Look at these CEOs running down to Mar-a-Lago, falling over themselves to give him the first, inaugural bottle of Coke. This is going to happen.
Diet Coke.
Thank you. In the farmer world, I'm going to be amazed at watching this, but that you've got RFK coming, and you saw that red dye thing yesterday, which, by the way, just mind-boggling how suddenly something that's caused tumors and cancer and all this stuff, suddenly one day, no new study, wow, we're going to ban it. I think that you're going to see big food and big pharma go in and suddenly flood the zone. Dan remarked about this in the past about big tech, and suddenly every lobbyist in the world is going to be like, would you like tickets to this? And we're going to hold a fundraiser for that. And they're going to step up and go full lobby.
But I challenged Trump to, in the face of all that showering of largesse, to drain the swamp. That'll be fantastic.
I will say, I think it's the DCCC or one of the Democratic House super PACs is running ads, I think in Iowa, against an Iowa House Republican, Sean, on the idea that RFK is going to harm the food industry, the agriculture industry.
Yeah. I mean, exactly. Today. That's the thing is, remember, suddenly everything's got a constituency. And this is why the defense industry is so brilliant when they build a ship. Like there's literally a part in every district, because they want to make sure that like these guys aren't dum-dums. They've built big businesses by doing things really smart in terms of making sure they've got legislative protection. And so you're right. I mean, the right thing to do, all of a sudden red dye gets banned out of thin air, which is causing huge problems. You've got ultra processed food, PFAS, all this other stuff. And these guys are going to come flood the zone, and they're going to protect their interest big time. So, to Mark's point, every one of these things that seems quote unquote common sense has got somebody that's making money, because God forbid, if let's just say hypothetically, and I'm not versed in this, but like that you push nuclear energy, that some industry, maybe it's coal, loses out as you sort of crowd out, one industry becomes more dominant. So I'm just saying that there's always another side that's going to fight.
Well,
Yeah.
you also
Chris-
have to be very careful not to conflate elite opinion with the general population, because immigration's a good example. The elites, the Rupert Murdochs of the world, all were for immigration reform, but the population wasn't there. And Trump, kind of struck that chord, and the Tea Party kind of went out in 2006
Trade was the
against
same
it.
way, Dan, right? I mean,
What?
trade.
Yeah, so I mean that's part of it is you got to get the people on board. I think it's one of Trump's genius, political skills. He's very street smart about where people are versus where elites are, and he doesn't care to exploit the difference.
Chris, two-part question. One, can you see Canada from your porch?
No, we're an hour south of Coeur d'Alene, so that's still 2.5 hours north.
Okay. And second, who said I can see Russia from my porch? Was it actually Sarah Palin, or was it Tina Fey playing Sarah Palin?
That's a good question. I would have called it Sarah Palin, but now you got me questioning myself.
Yeah, it was Tina Fey. Chris, totally serious. If your son wants to come on, we don't want to screw up his deal. But if he wants to come on and tell us his impressions of Mar-a-Lago, if he wants to do part of his presentation to us, we'd love to have him on.
Awesome. I will be talking to him later because he gives me daily updates when fun things happen. So,
Chris, can I just real quick before we let you go?
Yeah.
Did he know you were going to mention his Mar-a-Lago?
No, I didn't know I was going to this morning. So
good.
Here's the question.
Sorry, just to clarify one thing. What did you say? What did you say about your grandkids that they've been let to leave their home?
So my son, his wife, and their 3 kids are now living pretty close to LAX. They did their startup in El Segundo near all the technology stuff that's happening there. So we lost our kid. We're gonna have to move down there if we want to see our kids.
Got it. Okay, what were you about to say? I interrupted.
Okay, so just real quick on the trade-offs between when a new technology comes in. Interestingly, he's had really good conversations with a lot of the local legislators, politicians in West Virginia, because what he's doing is taking nuclear energy and creating synthetic fuels. He needs a lot of CO2. He wants to put these plants right next to their coal burning plants to make their coal net neutral or not net neutral, but like a ESG, whatever, like sustainable. And so the coal wins under that scenario because it's now climate safe.
Oh, I could see the political appeal of this. Yeah.
And this is why both parties are jumping on board.
Yeah. Thank you for joining. Let us know if you can book that boy of yours. We'd love to have him on.
Cool.
And I'm sure you haven't noticed, but I never look at the chat, but I happened to it flew by here. Everyone thinks you're too young to be a grandfather.
Yeah. Honestly, I started young. My kids started young. I'm 50, so yes, too young, but I actually have 7 grandkids, so not the only family.
All right, awesome.
Appreciate
Thank you, man.
it.
Really enjoyed having you on. Take care. All right, so we got a guest book for tomorrow. That's good. Lucas, welcome in. Tell folks where you are who don't know and what's on your mind, please, after you unmute.
Oh, this is absolutely wild that I'm on here. I was not expecting that. First, I want to say awesome. Nice to say hello to you. Giving a shout out to my buddy Matt in Kansas City, who was a big fan of the show also. What I wanted to talk about and just kind of bring up, earlier last week, you had that gentleman who owns the LA Times on, and that was pretty incredible. And I think he really spoke a lot of truth, how a lot of people feel about JFK Jr. A lot of times when I feel is that there's a lot of political and DC media and political elite that don't understand how many people just generally like JFK, but also
RFK
like myself who felt as if we got really screwed over the last 3 years by the medical establishment, and that quite frankly, with everyone freaking out over JFK Jr., there's a lot of us looking at it just saying, this is somewhat justice, quite frankly, is there's not retribution, but correcting of a lot of wrongs that happened during COVID. And I think that's really important. And, to a certain degree, that's also why there's a lot of people who are frankly okay with Tulsi Gabbard and her making some of the same people uncomfortable.
Yeah. Lucas, thank you. I'm just going to in a friendly way treat you. It's RFK, not JFK. That's okay. I make the mistake too.
My bad.
I make the mistake too. And the point of view you represented there is shared by tens of millions, and we hear people say that here, and I like the way you said it. Sean, reaction.
I think you're absolutely right. I mean, look, I think one of the things that has been exposed, and the reason I'm so outraged about this red dye thing is, we've seen this now with plastics. The other day, the announcement comes out, don't use plastic spatulas. And it's like, well, how long have you guys known that this has been bad? Why haven't you told us? The EPA did a thing the other day where they came out and said for 23 years, they've known something and they finally exposed it. And you start to go, wait a second, we were supposed to believe these government institutions. And a lot of things, as you pointed out, Lucas, got exposed during COVID about how they come to decisions. RFK has exposed many of the conflicts that exist on the NIH, the CDC, the FDA. And I'm one of those guys, like I said, I walk into a doctor's office, the doctor says, this is the problem, here's what we need to do to fix it. I believe it, right? Because that's what I was told. Same thing with a lot of government institutions. And what we're seeing over and over again is it's like Oz, the curtain's starting to get pulled back and we go, wait, you guys really allowed this to happen, or this conflict existed, or you based it off of this ridiculous study that was funded by the right. I mean, so I am so excited about what's to come for many of the reasons that you mentioned. And thank you for tuning in.
And one other thing that just like really gets me too is that, a lot of crazy stuff happened during the Trump administration with COVID, and I get it. However, Democrats have never taken responsibility that it was, I live in, Illinois and Chicago. It was J.B. Pritzker that ruined 3 years of my life. It was Lori Lightfoot. It was the people in Illinois. It was not Donald Trump. It was not all of them that said, hey, you have to work from home for 3 years, no matter your shot. And it was just absolutely ridiculous. So the fact that somehow they want to blame a lot of the COVID restrictions on Trump, yes, the first months, couple stuff, sure. But at the end of the day, there's a lot of Democrats who did not take any responsibility. And the one thing I will say about the vice presidential choice for Kamala Walls, I did appreciate in that VP debate where he did come out and apologized. But the thing is, that showed his true Midwestern mentality to apologize when he was wrong. I didn't see any other Democrat. I didn't see Kamala Harris. I didn't see Joe Biden apologize for the former CDC director, the former head of Massachusetts General Hospital, just outwardly lying to Congress and everyone about the vaccinations and its positivity. And it's just the lying. And that's what people really, really want RFK Jr. in there, quite frankly.
Lucas,
yeah,
thank you, Dan.
I think on the, first off, Lucas, thanks for speaking. There are certainly one of the things, and I've asked Democrats who have come on as part of the D Future series, one of the first questions is how do we win back RFK voters? Because it's a huge issue for the party going forward. To your point about COVID, I believe the Democrats' intentions were good. They thought they were doing the best at the time with the information they had. To your point, science and other things have proven that Democrats got it wrong in some places. So I think it's not to say, in my opinion, that, hey, you lied. It was, hey, we got it wrong. Lives were impacted. Kids being home, it is, and we have one child in our house, home, learning to read on Zoom, complete failure. We've had to throw tremendous resources to catch him up over the last 3 years. Thank God we have those resources. Most people do not. We have never kind of taken responsibility and accountability on that front, but I don't believe people intentionally lied and misled, just to be clear.
Maybe that's just mentality. It's just how I kind of feel for 3 years when I was forced from home. I mean, I didn't even I went through grad school for it during COVID. I didn't get an in-person graduation because because DePaul University is inside Chicago. And, and it was, the craziest thing is that the day before my graduation was supposed to happen was the Chicago reopening. But because they couldn't plan it,
it was too late
ahead of time or whatever. It was just ridiculous. And the university never even offered like a post-COVID, hey, anyone who couldn't make it walk through, and there's a lot of healing that needs to be happened. And that's why a lot of people are okay with RFKJ just roughing stuff up, quite frankly.
Yeah. Lucas, thank you for sharing all that. Really appreciate it. Thank you for coming in. We also want to thank Grandpappy Chris Taylor for joining us and everybody for being here. Tomorrow or tonight, regular program at 6. We'll be here tomorrow at 9. Then first to talk about this. on February 2nd, as many of you know, we're doing a live show in Washington, D.C. People are flying in from all over America to come. I'm not kidding. We're going to sell out. So if you want to come, get your tickets now. Pearl Street Warehouse, February 2nd, 5 p.m. in the Washington, D.C. Metroplex. To get more information and to purchase your tickets now, go to twoway.tv. Monday, everybody get out your Palm Pilots, your Trapper Keepers, your, what are those, moleskin calendar, whatever those things are. Mark this down. On Monday, Inauguration Day at 11:30 Eastern Time, we'll be live. We'll pregame the swearing in, President Trump's inaugural speech, and then we'll have a post-game discussion. Don't watch the inauguration one way on cable news. Watch it two-way with us. So mark that down. We'll tell you more about that coming up and how to join. Very grateful to you for being part of the two-way community. Loved the two questions. Look forward to having Chris's son on tomorrow to find out how the meatloaf was at Mar-a-Lago. And I'll see you tonight at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. And well, 3 of us will be back tomorrow at 9 a.m. Eastern Time. Have a great day. Enjoy the confirmation hearings.